This is the Atheist Guide to Spiritual Awakening. I'm your host Walter, and this episode is about good versus evil. I absolutely adore the topic of good versus evil for multiple reasons. First of all, it underlines most of the nice stories that we adore from our childhood, but also it underlies most of the debates we have in society, most of the fights we have with our loved ones, most of the reasons for any conflict to happen ever in this world. So let's start with trying to define what actually good and evil could mean. So first, is it about intentions or about results? Because those two things make a huge difference, because the best of intentions can lead to completely catastrophic outcomes. So it's not about the result. It can't be. You can't say that someone is bad because down the line somewhere it created a bad result. So what does it mean to have good or bad intentions? Well, first of all, let's remember that I don't believe in free will. And if you do, maybe you should listen to my episode about free will. Because if you can explain me how free will could work in a mechanistic, spiritual, or even divine world, then you will get a special prize, which is my everlasting admiration. Because so far, except by stating that free will exists, no one could ever make a case that free will exists in any way. So, since I'm assuming that free will doesn't exist, then my intentions, whatever that is, the things that are driving my actions or my new actions or the creations that I will do, are based, like everything else, on the whole history of the universe. So if I have bad intentions, it's because that history led me to this place where I have bad intentions. Now, honestly, I don't know anyone, and maybe you do, and if you do, please write in the comments. I don't know anyone that ever thought that his own intentions were bad. Maybe he was delusional and he had bad intentions that were masquerading under some justifiable good intentions for him, but that person thinks that his intentions are good. Maybe a more interesting question is, are my intentions good for me, for others, for future generations, for my close ones, for who will be impacted by something I do, and how should I balance these various impacts amongst each other? Well, if you explore a little bit the moral philosophy area, there are many types of moral philosophies that come from a different angle. Let me list you some. The first one I want to discuss is utilitarianism. Basically, the goal of utilitarianism is to maximize the total happiness of humanity. So under utilitarianism, each action should be weighed as anticipating the impact on the totality of humanity of each and every of our actions. Luckily, this is a theoretical concept because to start with, it's very difficult to take the whole of humanity into account in every moment when you need to make decisions. So it's already, you can train under utilitarianism to try to evaluate future scenarios that you might encounter and see how you should act in order to maximize human happiness. But let's be honest, it's a very difficult thing to do in the moment. Another angle on this same topic is that an action that would create happiness for me might be an action that if you would perform would make you sad. We are not the same people. So how can I know what, even if I would know all the impacts of each and every of my decisions, how would I know what resulting happiness increase or decrease it would generate in the population? So it's difficult under utilitarianism to decide what is a good or bad action, since we absolutely don't know what other people want from life or would dream of having, and how our decisions impact this dream of theirs. Then there are more metaphysical types of moral philosophies, like virtue theory. So what we should do is what a good or virtuous person should do. But that is kind of a circle loop, because since we don't know what other people want, and thus cannot say what the consequences of anyone's actions will be on the happiness of someone else, then we can't judge whether that action is good or bad for each and every person separately. And then how can we define what a virtuous or good person is that we could emulate? And then if we dig a little bit into the details of some of these evaluation of happiness, then what are we trying to optimize? Is it okay to sacrifice 10% of the population to multiply by a factor 50 the happiness of all others? Well, it's okay for the all others, but it's not really great for the percentage of the population that we sacrifice. Is it okay to sacrifice future generations to maximize the happiness of current ones? Well, it's not very species perpetuating, but who am I to say that indulging into a current happy world instead of investing with our own sweat into a future happy world is not better? Especially that we can't guarantee that the future of the planet will on one side exist and on the other side be happy, whatever we do. So it is very difficult to define what is good and what is evil. So what can we do in this discussion about the fight between good and evil? Well, first we can realize that maybe the easiest way to ensure someone's happiness is to give him or her the means to strive for their own happiness themselves. So there is a link between being good and allowing others to maximize their freedom. Now, this is quite clearly contradicting many of the social principles we are debating, especially intensely these last few years, about who should do what, or what should be allowed, or who decides what the common good is, or what it even is that we could call the common good. Let's take an example about in those discussions that are happening right now about mis, dis, and malinformation. Just for those of you that didn't hear about this terminology, misinformation is information that is false and is spreading, but without the intent to spread false information, just out of a honest mistake. Disinformation is information that is intentionally wrong and spread in one way or the other. And malinformation is true information, so factually true, but put in such a context that it induces distrust in some important institutions. Well, as much as this theoretically seems good, because indeed there is a lot of false information circulating in the digital age, who is deciding what is true or false? Who is deciding what was the intention of someone when spreading true information? Was it to endanger trust in some trustable institution, or was it just to tell the truth? And who is defining what is true? How can we know what network of incentives, facts, data, analysis, or whatever logical or illogical chain of deductions led someone from observing reality and making a statement about it in order to be able to assess whether that statement is true or false? So if someone is spreading information that is factually false but believe it's true, is that a good person or a bad person? And why do we care at the end of the day? What we should care about, in my opinion, is our individual freedom, our individual education, and and honing or tuning our own ability to analyze whether what information comes our way is correct, incorrect, resonates with our own taste, doesn't resonate with our own taste, is false, is manipulation, is a lie, or whatever. Now, let's talk a little bit about evil. There are actions that we wouldn't want to be executed against us. So we can define that the person that is, for instance, stabbing us is an evil person. Sure, it's something we should at all costs protect ourselves against, because since our freedom is core to our well-being, having someone come and stab us is quite an infringement of on our own individual freedom. So defending yourself is one thing, but how do you know why that person ran to you with a knife and tried to stab you? We simply don't know that. We don't know whether the rage that this person is experiencing is stemming from some childhood trauma, from some other mental illness, from some drug abuse. We don't know if it's drug abuse, why this person is taking drugs, what kind of pain they are undergoing that made them think at some stage that taking drugs would help them. We don't know anything about that person, their past, their intentions, their life. We didn't do their shadow work, so we can't know why they are doing what they are doing. But what we can be sure of is that if we are judging their actions as the actions of someone of pure evil, this will build a tremendous distance with that person, and maybe instead of protecting ourselves, we will protect ourselves, bash his head in, shoot him with a gun, and terminate his life. Maybe that's justified. It clearly is in a thing that in the moment is difficult to evaluate, but we will react harsher, harder, and less reasonably if we judge a person as being evil, as compared to simply judging a situation or analyzing a situation, evaluating our needs, wants in that situation, and taking the minimum action necessary to ensure our own well-being, our own freedom, and our own protection. If we move this conversation of good versus evil to a societal level, then it becomes even more complicated, because what one person judges as an evil action is based usually not only, especially when it's not impacting them personally, but it's a general discussion about, let's say, policy or regulations or societal norms. It is often not a question of absolute truth or absolute good or absolute evil. It's a question of taste. My personal taste is that my freedom is more important than my safety. So in the specific case of, let's say, the pandemic that happened, I would have preferred minimalistic actions from the state that maximizes my freedom, while at the same time giving out truthful and complete information on how to protect myself if I choose to do so. For me, the collective action that was taken to protect everyone as much as possible against all possible harm was actually a less desirable solution than the solution of letting the virus rip through the population and me taking the individual risk to potentially die from it. But I want to be clear, I'm not expecting anyone else to go with the same rules as I do. But I prefer that we individually decide what is good for us and that the collectivity gives us the means to be able to do what we want, then forcing my personal taste on the collective and having the state execute something that goes against the personal taste or interest of some part of the population, even if it's a minority. Let's discuss another example. The legality of drugs. I mean, we have in this society a set of fundamental rules, which is that you're not supposed to rob someone, you're not supposed to kill someone, you're not supposed to harm someone, hurt someone physically. So we have rules against the downstream consequences of what could potentially go wrong with drugs. So why do we need, on top of that, to make legislation that tells individuals what they should or should not put in their body? They will anyway face the downstream consequences of their actions if they are having a drug rage, for instance, if that thing happens to them. And this, we can hold this thought in our head that the war on drugs is going against individual freedom and thus is not that a great thing to do, and at the same time make sure that young people that are not able to make their own decisions are not exposed to a substance that they could use before they are ready to evaluate their own actions and make decisions. So the balanced view on the war on drugs is that adults should be allowed to do whatever they want. They are the only ones that could be targeted by companies that sell those drugs, but children should be protected. We can make balanced decisions that impact society in a way more productive way than a war on drugs that anyway does not lead anywhere. The opposition between good and evil is also interesting because it's one of the typical archetypal storyline of many religions. I mean, Satan, God, the opposition, bad people will go to hell with Satan, good people will be rewarded for their good actions and go to heaven with God. All this is part of our collective subconscious. So since it's part of the subconscious, that also means that it's not something that we spend a lot of time re-evaluating according to our own logical deductions. So it's maybe important that each of us spend some time thinking about these things of what is good, what is evil, who am I judging for what kind of actions, what is the balance between protecting myself versus attacking others for their own behaviors that do not impact my life in any way. Why do some people feel the need to save the sinners from their sins? I know this is written somewhere in some religious text that saving others is helping your path to paradise, but that presumes that that person that tries to save others from their sins has a higher moral ground than the other person. And it is absolutely egotistic, in my opinion, to think that you know better than others. There is also a related concept in good versus evil, which is chaos versus order. Generally, in the collective subconscious, we consider that chaos is bad and order is good. But is it so? Think about what it means to change something. If you want to change the arrangement of your apartment, for instance, you will start moving things, and first you will go through a chaotic phase where nothing looks good before you attain the new order that you wanted to create with the new arrangement. So chaos was not bad. Chaos was a tool to move from one stable, ordered situation to the next stable order situation that you like better. The same for society. Think, for instance, about the social progress that was made under FDR in the United States. The general idea of the people is that the positive changes happened because FDR had a great heart. But the reality of it is that the chaos that was happening due to worker protests and general strikes and the confrontation between workers and the police force was so extreme that FDR was actually afraid that a communist revolution would come to the United States. So he didn't change the social system out of the goodness of his heart, but because he was afraid that a form of chaos that he didn't like would overtake the country. So again here, chaos was a tool for change, for moving from one stable ordered system to the next stable ordered system. And if you look at other religions than the Christian religion, like Hinduism, for instance, there are some gods in those systems, like Shiva in the Hindu case, that carry at the same time the forces of destruction, chaos, and creation, new order. So many of the past thinkers and philosophers and spiritual people had this realization that in order to enact any change, you might need to first destroy something, or shuffle something, or shake up something that was what was before the change that you wanted to enact. Even if we look simply inside ourselves, sometimes we need to destroy a part of our belief system, of our way of acting, of our inner programming, in order to become a better version of ourselves. So the forces of destruction sometimes need to be applied to ourselves by ourselves. And it's painful, it's hard, it's difficult, but without destroying something in ourselves, maybe we can never put in this improvement that we want. Even physical exercise is a form of destruction followed by creation. When we work out, we are actually destroying muscle fibers or muscle cells, and it's in the repair that the body does after having been attacked by the exercise that we grow stronger muscles, that we repair dysfunctional parts of our body. So we shouldn't be afraid of chaos or of destruction or of pain, because these are doorways to improvement. So why are we so stuck in this force density type of good versus evil, chaos versus order type of thinking? Well, amongst other things, is because we are used to that as a humanity, but also because it allows a certain portion of the population to maintain their relevance. If we would go to the other extreme of our current social organization, which would be complete individual sovereignty with the right to define and defend our own boundaries, then all of a sudden the state wouldn't have any relevance. We would organize in local communities. We would work together with our neighbors in order to define what are the rules that we want to apply to ourselves. We could negotiate them for weeks and reach something which is a balance between the needs of everyone involved, so not having just the majority satisfied, but finding the optimal solution that frustrates as few people as possible, and that those that are frustrated would be willingly accepting the compromise because they see the need of that other part of the population that benefits from it, and everything would become face-to-face or person-to-person communication inside our tribe, inside our community. then we could reorganize the world by voluntarily networking our community with any other in order to create larger markets, larger sharing for projects that are part of the common good broader than our local community. What prevents us from doing that? Part of it is that we think that we are surrounded by a significant percentage of people that are our enemies because they are the evil. And since we hear that from our politicians, from the church, and from other institutions, it is reinforcing that belief that we couldn't get along with way too many people if we would be sovereign people. Is that true? Do you really think it's true? Do you know so many people that you can't find a modus vivendi with? So is that really a justification for a government that is at the end a minority ruling on the majority or on everyone else? And the final thought about good versus evil is obviously we associate the word evil to everything that causes us pain. But okay, pain is a bad moment. Pain is a bad experience. Pain is something we don't like. Pain is something we try to avoid. But when is it that we actually grow as an individual, except in periods of hardship and of pain? Now, that doesn't justify at all to inflict pain onto other beings, but if we would be a little bit less afraid of our own pain, we would grow up much faster and learn much more wisdom at a younger age. So is it even the role of society to protect individuals against all form of pain and to define anything that causes pain as evil? Think even about the meaning of unconditional love. What use is it to have this ability to love others, which makes us spring into action to help them, if no one ever experiences anything that is difficult? Do we really want to live in a society that looks like Wall-E, where everyone is fed with the junk food, with the entertainment, doesn't do anything difficult? It doesn't seem a very happy society. It looks like a senseless society. And now the most difficult part of this conversation. We could use everything I just said as a justification for doing whatever we want and not caring about anyone else. But that is not how human emotions work. We are really wired from birth to feel the emotions of others, and except if we shut ourselves down and cut our empathy, we will feel the pain of others. And it's not because there is no absolute good or absolute evil that we shouldn't reflect on the pain that we inflict onto others, because if we want to be individually free, happy, and avoid as much pain as possible, or take on only the pain that makes us grow and helps in our path, then we should realize that doing the same for others is a good idea. So it's not because everyone does his best that there is no absolute good or absolute evil, that we can just say, oh, I will be an asshole, that's okay. Anyway, I don't have free will, I do whatever I want. Well, we can, because at the end of the day, we have absolute freedom. The only thing we don't have freedom from is from facing the consequences of our actions. So without a society, nothing would prevent me from going out and shooting someone. But nothing prevents the family of that someone from then shooting me. So it's not that different. There's no way of escaping the consequences of our actions. They will come back to haunt us, to harm us, and our ability for empathy will make us hurt if we are not numb and shut down for various reasons. even before the karma hits, let's say. So I let you reflect a little bit on what is good, what is evil, what do you want society to protect you against, and why, what of your values you want to impose on others, and how does that really benefit you. Why isn't freedom something you value more? Or why is freedom the only thing that you value and you're ready to be an asshole to protect your own freedom? Where is the balance? Let's try to solve this paradox, and I'm fairly sure that we can build something much better than what we live in now. This was the Atheist Guide to Spiritual Awakening, and this episode was about good versus evil. I would really love to hear from you in the comment section, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Waltika, Waltika. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and talk to you soon.